Feeling a bit insecure? I know I am. And I know I was so much before I clicked record that I Googled, does everyone feel insecure? Does everyone have insecurities? And Google told me yes. And so now I feel a little bit more secure about discussing this topic. Now, interestingly, what Google also said about insecurity is everyone feels it from time to time, but it doesn't last forever. And that again made me feel a bit secure about coming on here today and going through the insecurity process and how I've been able to sort of overcome that throughout my evolution. And I'll sum it up in this way as I was contemplating this morning life, what it is, what it means, and what I need to do. And what came to me and struck me was my ability to resolve and dissolve and release insecurity comes down to this statement, which is release what God has for you by releasing God. And I'm going to get to explicitly what that means, but I want to go through again what inspired me to talk about insecurities. And it really revolves around the process of trying to emotionally mature myself, the process of trying to chase a greater life, whatever that means. I'm not putting a dollar amount or an award, a prize, or a trophy on it. I think it's just being less insecure in my chase for life. And and as I considered where I started and where I'm now at, a lot of the insecurities were built around my frustrations with other people, constantly looking at and feeling like the world is this angry, violent, judgy, mean place. And it's easy to absorb that and identify it because when you're feeling insecure about yourself, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, it's very easy to begin identifying the meanness in this world and the types of things that people say to you both directly and indirectly. And we've experienced it. We've experienced it through our childhood growing up. We experienced it in our environments, whether it be from outside sources, social sources, even internal family sources. We know how it goes. We know the types of things people say and how it can make us feel and how it mitigates the life experience and sometimes just puts a huge barrier and stops us and prevents us from expanding our worlds, our own worlds, which is to just really feel a bit more secure about who we're trying to be. And as I considered what are some of the processes and steps, and I considered again the evolution of where I've come from experiencing insecurities and rationalizing it through varying ways, it brought me to the space of release what God has for you by releasing God. So consider this that some of the emotionally mature steps and concepts are to understand first and foremost that clearly you have insecurities. And when you can identify that you have your own insecurities, then you can start to identify externally when someone makes you feel insecure, there's a reality to you're being triggered. I mean, it's pretty logical, right? Somebody tells you something, for example, when I was drinking heavily, think about this. Think about how this works and the mind, how it really manipulates you and highlights your insecurities and can make you feel away. I was drinking every day, every night. It got to the point where it was day, afternoon, and night. And for some reason, if someone would look at me and say, hey, you're a drunk, that would make me feel massively insecure. Well, why? There's a truth to that. Is it mean? Is it necessary? Should that person be doing that? Under what context? Was the person trying to hurt my feelings? Was the person trying to make me feel insecure? Was the person trying to help me? Was it an intervention? It didn't matter. It's still a fact. If you're feeling insecure about your weight, I've been there, 230 pounds, fluffy face. You know what I'm saying? I look at some of my pictures now and it's like, ooh, I can't believe I went through that phase. But if somebody says something about being physically fit or physically unfit, naturally it triggered an insecurity. When I was making $4 an hour before I was able to ascend in my career. Not having money, massive insecurity for me. And identifying it, whether it was somebody bringing it to the forefront for whatever the reason, because people are mean and people say things that it just hurts. There's a natural understanding that what they're saying has some validity, and I can't get over that. So, so naturally, we look at what's being said and directed in our attention and saying, this person is mean. This person is whatever this person is, in order to rationalize our insecurity in a way that says it's them, not me, right? So that's one of the processes, the evolution of identifying, okay, I'm going to take my insecurity, know that if somebody brings it to my attention, and a lot of times too, it's a loved one, somebody really, really close, because they can identify more where you're lacking than not, and poke at your insecurities. It's them, it's not me, right? And that's a phase. And as you mature and start to understand, wait, it really is me, you can go through a process of starting to say, oh, something just popped up on my screen, excuse me. I think the next natural step in the process is, okay, clearly people are going to say mean things. Clearly it makes me feel a way. Maybe there's some truth to it. And then we sort of invert the process and say, I got some things to work on. But then we look at people as they start to identify insecurities, as they start to show a little jealousy or a little bit of envy or a little bit of I'll keep saying meanness because I can't think of another word today, that when they display this emotion, it's definitely them. Because you can quantify this by saying, in order for you to identify what you believe is a weakness in me, what you believe is delta or lack in me, is because you also have the same insecurity. You also have the same delta, the same void, the same lack exists in you. And the logic is very simple. How could you identify in me what you can't see, and what I need to be doing and not be doing and should be doing? Is simply because you have experience in the same vein. You too. You're giving me the best advice possible. And maybe you have a sneaky underlying real true intent to see me do better. But the reality of some of that is you want to identify it in me because you identify it in you. But like I used to identify it in me and think of you as somebody who is jealous, envious, and just not the right person for me. The reality is I understand now because I feel it. Clearly you're feeling it. So we push it away in that way and say, okay, the next step in the process of insecurity is when somebody brings it to my attention, it's them. And they're weak and they're nasty and they're overweight, drunk, and they can't get their lives together. And when we push it out that way, it sort of makes us feel a little bit better about the insecurities we either still have or might be overcoming. Because if you can identify that when you release an emotion, or when someone's able to drum up an emotion in you, you thereby are giving them your energy and leveraging their negative energy to essentially make you feel negative. You stop that, right? I'm no longer going to allow you to make me feel how you feel. That's how you spin it. And it's a natural step in the process. You go from identifying you're insecure to they're insecure, and you're working on your insecurities. And because you might be working on your insecurities and clearly you know they're not, then they're lesser than you. And again, that's a natural step in the process. Now, interestingly, a lot of the concepts involved in understanding and identifying and taking like a mirror view, that when you look in the mirror, I see them. So I empathize with them now. I have compassion for them because they're really just going through what I was going through, what I'm still going through, and what I can't really get over. There's there's a different depth to that, where the idea is that, yes, a lot of what they're spewing in your direction, you should ignore it. You should not take it personal. You should let it go because it's them. But also, you're not better. You're not better. I'm not better. No one is better. The fact that you may have overcome some of your insecurities, the fact that I no longer drink, the fact that I get up at a certain time in the morning and I pray and I read and I meditate and I do my cardio and I lift and I have a different relationship with all the people who are closer to me. The fact that I've been able to expand my money in a way that puts me in a certain class of people. None of that, all of that makes me better. Sure. All of it makes me feel less insecure. Sure. But there is no measuring stick in how I define success and the success you may not have, which makes me less secure and maybe makes you even more insecure because you're watching me win while you're suffering through losses. And I can clearly identify that and know it's you and not me. It doesn't make me better. And it doesn't make you worse. And it doesn't make me right. And it doesn't make you wrong. And it doesn't mean that you should really emphasize and elevate and pedestal yourself because you know you've made some gains while other people are in the same space. That's not, I think, the full final maturation and evolution of the process. It's not to go from being angry with the world, that they appear to be angry at you, to identifying that you can overcome some weaknesses and some insecurities, and that they're now insecure and you're better. For me, what I've learned and what helps me to be able to navigate, because you're always going to have a level of insecurity. You're always going to have a level of self-doubt. You're always going to have a level of feeling like what you're doing or who you're being is not quite it. And you're going to have really, really down and bad days. They don't go away. Now, what I've been able to do and what I think for me really, really permeates and really is, I believe, what helps me be a healthy contributor to life is this reality. I really don't want to deal with no drama. I don't want to deal with your insecurities. I barely want to deal with my insecurities. I don't want to deal with your jealousy and envy and the fact that you may have a vendetta or the fact that you just may be mad at life. And I certainly don't want that in my energy space and in my force field. But I think the final evolution and maturation, because people are telling you in this space when you're getting better, you really should have compassion and you really should have empathy. It is to understand this. Release what God has for you by releasing God. And if I can believe that I am from, and this is a cultural thing that's pretty obvious what I'm alluding to, I'm about to say explicitly, is that if I can use my insecurities to know that I need to overcome myself and gain a certain level of status in life that makes me feel phenomenal about myself, it is the core fundamental value of understanding I am made in God's image, Creator's image, the powerful image that gives us life. I am that source. I am absolutely that source. And when I leverage that source to say, I can overcome and release what God has for me to ensure that I balance myself between insecure and secure. I balance myself between successful and unsuccessful. I balance myself towards achieving what I want to achieve in life. Then guess what? If that is true for me, and I am no better and I am no different, then that is true for you. In that, you have the same power, the same energy source, the same image. And if for some reason you find yourself in an insecure state, a state that has you at low frequency, low energy, low vibes, and you're not seeing the sort of life you want to see for yourself, what I empathize with is this. I still may want to have nothing to do with you. I still may want to distance myself, but that's more because I'm trying to protect and I'm still learning and going through the evolution process. But here's what this comes down to. I can empathize with you because you too are in that image and it hasn't been released yet. What God has for you, or whatever maker and creator has for you, the spirit that resides in you, it just hasn't been released. And so I see and I empathize with my creator and God who is in you. The way it is all is just a frustrated, blocked, confused version that's trying to release itself. And because God believes that you were created in God's image, to have free will, Creator and God and universe loves you enough to do whatever it is you want to do, inclusive of staying in an insecure state, staying in a low frequency and energy state. All that's required, and I say it tongue in cheek because it's a big all that's required. It's a massive leap and a massive step. If you find yourself unable to overcome insecurities and self-doubt and the criticism that's internal, that is being obviously reminded to you in other areas because people can identify it and give you all the best advice they don't take for themselves, release the God in you. Release the God in you by releasing God. You're just a bit frustrated. You're just a bit wound up tight. You're just a bit confused. Lock in on what makes you insecure. Figure out what it would take to become secure, like putting the bottle down, going for a walk, lifting a few weights, having different conversations, exposing yourself to different levels of God and creativity and possibilities. Change your mind, change your life. I am who I say I am. Do you and stay rich.